Sorry guys, I haven't come across any cases worth telling lately. Plus, some things have happened to me recently and I like to share them with you. So, for this video, we're still diving into real-life horror experiences. This time, the theme is dreams. I've talked before about a case where a murderer was caught thanks to the dream. Back then, we even discussed the possible scientific explanations behind it. But the 4 stories you're about to hear, they may have already gone beyond the reach of science. You know the drill. If you enjoy my videos, just give me a like and subscribe. Also, this video contains jump scares, so when you see this little ghost pop up, cover your eyes if you need to. In 2016, a user on Douban made a post about a bizarre dream she had, and she wasn't sure if it means something or what she should do about it, so she asked for advice. Next, I will share with you in the first-person view. One night, I had a strange dream. In the dream, I found myself in a village called Guo Village. It was a small place, surrounded by red sandstone formations. I was wandering through the village, and that's when I ran into a girl. She was tied up, looking absolutely terrified, clearly had been kidnapped and brought there. She told me her name was Mo Bei and quickly recited the phone number, begging me to call her mom for help. I was shocked too, just stood there, frozen, staring at her face. But the longer I looked, the more unsettled I felt. She looked so much like me. And then the weirdest thing happened. Her face slowly morphed into mine. In other words, I was watching myself, tied up and begging me for help. Then the scene suddenly shifted. I was now in the mountains, watching as the girl tried to escape. She ran as fast as she could down the slope, but the villagers, standing on higher ground, could see exactly where she was going. So no matter how hard she tried, they always caught her and dragged her back. She could never get away. And then, just like that, the dream cut to black. When I woke up, I couldn't shake the feeling that it had been too real. It didn't feel like a dream at all. But unluckily, I couldn't remember the phone number she had given me. Now I don't know what to do. Should I report this to the police? Or was it just a nightmare? People online were intrigued and started piecing things together. And that's when things got really creepy. First, someone pointed out that Guo Village actually exists. It's a real place in Baoji City, Shanxi Province. And the most creepy part is, locals pronounce Guo as Gui, which sounds like the word for ghost. So, to some, Guo Town basically sounds like ghost town. However, Guo Town wasn't some hidden mountain village. It was part of the city, with paved roads and security cameras everywhere. It also wasn't surrounded by red sandstone formations. The nearest place with that kind of landscape was a 7-hour drive away. That's when some people started urging OP to check it out. What if this was a real supernatural cry for help? Maybe there really was a kidnapped girl in danger. But not everyone agreed. One user said they had shown OP's post to a spiritual master, and the master's response was clear: do not go. According to the master, the girl in the dream wasn't some stranger. She was OP's future self. So if OP ever went to that town, she would be kidnapped and imprisoned, just like in the dream. But the OP wasn't convinced. She argued that if the girl in the dream really was her, she would have instinctively asked her dad for help, not her mom. But at this point, the whole thread had taken on a life of its own, and everyone was on edge. Then, OP disappeared. She stopped updating the post, and gradually, the discussion faded into obscurity. At least until 4 years later. On June 5, 2020, OP suddenly updated the thread, and what she wrote only made the whole thing even stranger. Back in 2016, after much debate, she had not gone to Guo Village. She also didn't report anything to the police. After all, there was no real evidence. But now, years later, she deeply regretted that decision. Because ever since that dream, her life had gone downhill fast. At the time of the dream, OP was 19 years old, living a comfortable, worry-free life. But after that night, everything changed. First, she was diagnosed with depression. Then she broke up with her childhood sweetheart. Not long after, her father suddenly died of a heart attack, and her mother was diagnosed with cancer. By the time of the update, her family had lost everything. So she started wondering, was this karma? Had she doomed herself by ignoring the girl's plea for help? Then, 8 months later, on February 22nd, 2021, OP updated the thread again. This time, she only wrote one sentence. I'm going to find the red sandstone. Wish me luck. That single line sent the whole forum into a frenzy. People begged OP not to go, because when you really think about it, the whole situation looked like an endless loop. A girl is trapped in the mountains. She reaches out to her future self for help. The future self ignores the warning and suffers terrible misfortune. Desperate for answers, she decided to go investigate. A girl is trapped in the mountains. It was as if OP was being pulled toward Guo village, step by step, like destiny was forcing her onto the same path, and the only way to break the cycle was for OP to never go. One person even pointed out, remember how OP originally said if the girl was really her, she would have called her dad for help, not her mom? Well, that's because by 2021, her father had already passed away, and now the only person she could turn to was her mother, just like in the dream. On March 13, 2021, OP came back with one last update. She said instead of going to Guo village, she took a business trip to a city in southern China to clear her mind. She decided to put the whole thing behind and never visit that place. Shortly after, she deleted the entire thread. And just like that, the story was over, or at least we hope it was. This story gives me a strange feeling, almost as if OP was destined to face some kind of catastrophe, but somehow she unknowingly foresaw the future and managed to avoid it. And when she did, fate simply found another way to make her go through it, by tearing her family apart. Of course, that's just my speculation. It could all be pure coincidence. Maybe OP had heard of Guo town somewhere before without realizing it, and her brain just stored that information, bringing it up in a dream. After all, the red sandstone landscape she described doesn't actually match the real place. That being said, let me give you a little friendly advice. If someone in a dream ever asks you to go somewhere or agree to something, just say no. Back in 1998, during my final year of high school, I had a strange dream. At the time, I was living in northeast China near the foot of Changbai Mountain, but in my dream, I was standing in a plaza by the sea. Just when I was looking around, a carriage rolled up carrying two men. Let's call them Mr. W and Mr. D. I remember it vividly. Mr. W stepped down from the carriage and walked toward me. I studied his face carefully, but didn't recognize him. Then he said, I'm your future husband. Mr. D, on the other hand, remained by the carriage, watching me from a distance. After that, I started walking down the road, heading in a certain direction. That's when another man approached from the opposite side. Let's call him Mr. L. But unlike Mr. W, he didn't say a word. He just brushed past me and kept walking. When I woke up, I didn't think much of it. After all, I had never met any of those three men before, so I assumed they were just figments of my imagination. But then, the strange part began. A few months later, I was accepted into a university far from my hometown. On the very first day of school, I was stunned, because right there in my own class was Mr. W, the same W from my dream. I found it unbelievable, but I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want people to think I was crazy. Besides, if fate had really brought us together, things would naturally fall into place. So, for 4 years, we remained just classmates. Then, right before graduation, Mr. W confessed his feelings for me. Because of that dream, I agreed to be with him almost instantly. At first, I was deeply in love, convinced we were meant to be. But over time, something felt off. Being with him made me feel suffocated. Not because of any personal flaws, but just this inexplicable, heavy feeling whenever we were together. I thought maybe it was just a normal friction between two people from different backgrounds and that we just needed time to adjust. After graduation, we got married, but leading up to the wedding, a series of strange and unlucky events kept happening. The day after we set a wedding date, I suddenly fell ill. Still, I forced myself to push through and travel to his hometown to meet his family. But while we were waiting for the train, an unexpected downpour flooded the entire station within minutes, causing massive delays. Just when we thought we were stuck, the rain stopped as suddenly as it had started, and the station resumed operations. Then, on the way to his house, we got into a car accident. Finally, we made it to the wedding day. In our region, it's common for the bride and groom to be playfully teased by friends on their wedding night. But my husband's sister-in-law went particularly hard on us, and it got really frustrated. That's when his elder sister casually threw out a chilling remark. "Relax, young man, you will understand when you get married again." All in all, everything felt off, but I kept holding onto the idea that our relationship was destined, all because of that dream. The year we got married, I started a new job in a coastal city. One day, I saw it. The exact same plaza from my dream. That's when I really began to believe my dream had been a prophecy. And sure enough, at my new workplace, I met Mr. L. Mr. L fell for me at first sight and even asked people to introduce us. But by then, I was already married. Just like in the dream, we simply crossed paths and nothing more. By now, you might be wondering, if both Mr. W and Mr. L had appeared in real life, what about Mr. D, the man who had stood by the carriage, watching from a distance? Well, I had the same question. 10 years later, WeChat introduced the shake function, where you could randomly connect with people nearby. Just for fun, I gave it a try, and to my shock, I connected with Mr. D. What was even stranger, he shared the same surname and zodiac sign as my husband, Mr. W. No wonder, in my dream, they had been in the same carriage. Then through a strange twist of fate, my child ended up becoming good friends with this child through an online game. Because of this, we started taking the kids out together. During one of those outings, Mr. D casually mentioned that he was divorced and raising his child alone. At the same time, my own marriage was falling apart. My husband, W, was exposed for having an affair with an elderly wealthy woman. He didn't even try to hide it. He admitted it outright and pushed for a divorce. By then, I already felt our marriage was beyond saving, so I agreed. 2 months later, W married a rich woman, and as for me, I found myself growing closer to D. That's when I discovered the final, unsettling truth. D had never actually been divorced. Looking back, I finally understood why, in my dream, he had only watched from a distance. After that, I cut off all contact with him and focused on my own life, raising my son alone. Strangely enough, ever since my divorce, my life has been smooth sailing. The heavy, oppressive feeling I had with Mr. W vanished instantly. What's more, for the 12 years I was married to him, my health was terrible, and I barely saved any money. But after the divorce, my health improved almost overnight, and within just 3 years, I managed to save a significant amount. It feels as though my marriage to W was some kind of trial, a test I had to endure, and now that is over, my real life is finally beginning. Later, OP added in the comments that when she got married, her entire family disapproved of Mr. W, but she stubbornly went through with it anyway, almost as if it was fated. What's even weirder is that she both married and divorced Mr. W during her 本命年, the year of her Chinese zodiac sign, and the day of her divorce just so happened to be her birthday. Maybe that means the loop was completed and she was reborn. As for her ex-husband, Mr. W, after marrying the rich woman, her business started going downhill. No one knows if it had anything to do with him, but honestly, I think it had to be connected. The guy seems to suck the luck out of his partners. Damn, that's terrifying. This is a real energy vampire. I once heard a theory that every person we cross paths with is because of a lingering karmic connection. And when two people get married, it's often because their souls are repaying a debt from a past life. Once the debt is settled, they naturally part ways. Of course, some debts are massive, like saving someone's life, which binds two souls together forever. And then there are those who stay single their whole lives. Well, congratulations, You're totally debt-free. When I was little, I watched a movie with my dad called Purple Sunset. I don't remember much about the plot, but I do remember one thing. A Japanese girl in the movie had a music box shaped like a traditional Japanese doll. As a kid, I was instantly drawn to it. I told my dad how much I loved it and that I wanted one too. But at the time, he had no idea where to find one. Years passed and I completely forgot about it. By then, my dad had switched jobs and often traveled for work. One day, he came home from a trip and suddenly pulled something out from behind his back. The moment I saw it, I recognized it instantly. It was the same kind of Japanese doll. The doll was wooden, painted with red flowers in her hair and wearing a traditional kimono. She was adorable. I was overjoyed and carefully placed my new treasure in my bookshelf, often taking it out to admire it. As time went on, I collected more and more toys, and the doll was gradually forgotten. She remained in the same spot, but as my bookshelf filled up with books and clutter, she was slowly buried beneath it all. So by the time I entered high school, she completely disappeared from my mind. But when I was in college, something happened. Something so strange that it forced me to remember her again. At the time, I was living with my grandparents, but one year, both of them fell ill and had to stay in the hospital. For the first time, I was home alone. One night, I had a terrifying dream. In the dream, I was standing in front of my bookshelf. Inside, curled up among the books, was the body of a pale, chubby girl. Before I could even react, the scene suddenly shifted. I found myself in a traditional Japanese hot spring inn. The sky above was a deep, eerie shade of blackish red, and the strange, dark mist lingered in the air. I walked to the reception area, where I saw an elderly woman and a young girl. The old woman wore a gray kimono, while the girl wore a red one, had long, jet black hair, and a red flower tucked above her ear. Strangely enough, I didn't feel scared in the dream. I just casually asked them where I was. But before I could finish my sentence, a group of bandits suddenly burst in. The old woman and the girl immediately covered behind me in fear. Instinctively, I turned around, carried the old woman on my back, and grabbed the little girl's hand, running for our lives. But the girl was wearing wooden clogs, and she couldn't run very fast. When I glanced back, the girl's body was still running beside me, but her head was floating behind, chasing after us. We kept running until we finally lost the bandits. I stopped to catch my breath, but when I looked up again, I saw the girl's head slowly drifting back toward the body. The moment the two reconnected, the old woman bowed repeatedly, thanking me, while the girl gave me a small, polite nod, and then I woke up. The dream unsettled me, especially the part about the corpse in my bookshelf. It had felt so real. Still half asleep, I got out of bed and immediately pulled open my bookshelf, then something fell from the top shelf instantly. Startled, I reflexively caught it. Oh, just that Japanese doll. No corpse? Of course not. But it looked so familiar. The black hair, red flower, red kimono. It looked exactly like the girl in my dream. For the first time, I also noticed something I had never realized before. Her head and body were connected by an elastic band, meaning her head could actually be removed. At that moment, the image of the girl's floating head flashed through my mind again. I don't know what I was thinking, but I spoke to the doll. Was that you? If you have something to say, tell me in my dream. Then I placed it back on the shelf. Of course, that night, I had another dream. But this time, it was far beyond anything I could comprehend. In the dream, I was lying on an old wooden bed in a crumbling, unfinished room. The sheets and blankets were filthy, covered in mold. Above me, torn pieces of red silk dripped from the wooden beams, swaying eerily in the dim light. The whole place felt abandoned and sinister. I turned my head and nearly jumped out of my skin. Right beside me, a girl was lying there, sleeping. She had long black hair, pale skin, and was wearing a blood-red kimono with a red flower in her hair. The moment I woke up in the dream, she opened her eyes too and smiled at me. Gentle, affectionate, almost like a lover would. For some reason, I felt drawn to her, like I had known her forever. In that moment, a voice whispered in my mind, "She's my bride." Without thinking, I leaned in to kiss her, but she shyly shook her head, pushed me away gently, and pointed toward the foot of the bed. I turned and saw a massive wooden table with a giant incense burner, a pig's head, and several offerings of chicken and duck. It looked just like an altar, as if someone was being worshipped in this very bed. Then the girl pointed at the incense. Without hesitation, I picked up a stick, lit it, and placed it in the burner. She nodded in approval, then pointed toward the left side of the bed. There, behind two large red curtains, I saw something that made my blood run cold. An entire wall covered in ancestral tablets, hundreds of them. It finally hit me. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. I wanted to run, but my body wouldn't move. It was as if I was no longer in control. Instead, I started burning incense for each and every tablet, just as she wanted me to. When I finally finished and returned to the bed, I realized I was now holding a pair of red embroidered wedding shoes. I had no idea where they had come from. I dropped them on the floor and climbed back into the bed. This time, when I leaned in to kiss the girl, she smiled in satisfaction. Just as our lips touched, I woke up. I had no idea what that dream meant. After that, I decided to store the doll separately. I never threw her away. After all, she was a gift from my dad, but from that day on, I never dreamed of her again. The way he described the red drapes and the altar, that definitely wasn't anything good. If anything, it screamed ghost marriage. I'm almost certain that the doll had a spirit living inside it, and in the dream, she was making OP perform a ritual for her. Out of curiosity, I looked up these Japanese dolls. They are called hinaningyo, and they are super traditional and usually displayed for Girls' Day on March 3rd. But they aren't just decorations. They are also used for rituals. After the Girls' Day, people send them floating down rivers or into the sea, basically as a way to transfer bad luck onto the dolls and get rid of it. Some even say that if you don't put them away after the Girls' Day, it could mess with the daughter's chances of getting married. Either way, these dolls definitely don't give off the most wholesome vibe. Finally, I want to share something that happened to me recently. Longtime viewers might remember that my aunt-in-law passed away at the end of last year. Then, in mid-February, I dreamed of her. In my dream, my aunt-in-law had gone out early in the morning with some friends, but by nighttime, a heavy storm rolled in, and she got stranded far from home. She called us for help. My uncle reassured her over the phone, then grabbed my aunt, my grandpa, and me, and we all got in the car to go pick her up. We were driving on a narrow mountain road when things started getting weird. First, we scraped the car while making a turn. Then, a huge snake suddenly slithered onto the road, blocking our path. Not long after, a hedgehog stopped right in front of our car. And finally, we even ran over a dog. By this point, I had a bad feeling. I told them, it feels like something doesn't want us to go. Maybe we should turn back and try again tomorrow? My uncle thought about it and agreed. But when we got home, my aunt-in-law was already there. She was sitting on a worn-out little sofa, smiling at me. She looked good, healthy and full of life. And sitting beside her, snuggled up close, was an elderly woman. And then I woke up. The next day, I told my parents about the dream and described the old lady I had seen. I had actually met her before, at my grandmother's funeral, so I recognized her instantly in the dream. But when my parents heard this, they were stunned. They told me that this old woman was my aunt's neighbor, and she had died one day before my aunt. Now it was my turn to be shocked, because I had no idea what kind of relationship the old lady had with my aunt-in-law, let alone she had passed away too. To me, she seemed healthy and full of energy, but looking back, it makes sense why I saw her so clearly in my dream. After all, most faces in dreams are blurry, yet hers was crystal clear. And that's not even the end of it. I didn't dare to tell my cousin about the dream. I was worried it might make her sad. But later, my aunt, hoping to comfort her, ended up telling her about it. That's when my cousin revealed something interesting, and making me believe this dream is real. She said she had actually been thinking about finding a medium to try to contact my aunt-in-law, just to see if she was doing okay in the afterlife. But now, after hearing about my dream, she feels like My aunt had already sent us a message. She didn't want us looking for her. It all lined up perfectly with those strange animals in the dream, blocking the road and stopping us from going any further. I've always been a huge fan of paranormal stories, but to be honest, I was never fully convinced that ghosts or afterlife were real. But after this, I truly believe in souls. And more than anything, I'm happy to know that my aunt-in-law is doing well in the next world. No more pain and with old friends to keep her company. Alright, that's all the stories for today. If you've ever had an interesting dream, paranormal or not, feel free to share it in the comments. So, see you in the next video. Bye bye.